history of the WNBA. Top of the slot,
It's silver for Canada. Oh boy, the Americans, 4 straight gold medal wins over Canada. That's the story of the day. That's what we're going to be diving into. Hey, how are you? It's Cody Jansen, Adam Ermitrout with you. World Hockey Report live, coming to you 12-ounce sports, Zingo TV, channel 761. A little bit of a different feel to this one. I'm not going to lie. Best tournament in the world. Canada did not show up for us Canadians in that gold medal game. The Americans were great. We got to give them credit. And hey, that's what we're going to be talking about on the show. Absolutely loaded. We're just going to try to connect here with Barstool Jordy. Might have to do it on the fly. Might have to get him on, at around 11:20ish or so. We're going to be working on that. Then we got Stephen Ellis coming up. Jason Clark as well. You've heard of Devin Levi, but have you heard of the man who coached him in Carleton Place? We're going to talk to him, kind of get some dirt on Devin Levi. What was he like? What were the scouts saying? Go through some of that then. 11:40, Colton Tubert's coming on the show. 2-time World Juniors. He's got a gold. He's got a silver. Oh, now we've got Jordy on the line. What's up, Jordy? How are you?
What's good? You guys came across my phone as spam risk, so I'm a little worried about how this conversation is going to go. I don't know. Don't know if you guys are still a little salty or not, but.
Oh man. Okay. Well, there you go. That's a fair reason. But, buddy, I mean, let's just dive right into the tournament here. We don't have a ton of time, but where does this rank among all-time USA wins for you? I mean, what a tournament for the Americans. This is arguably one of the best teams of all time. I mean, you've covered enough of it. Where does it rank for you?
Yeah, so, obviously the 17 tournament for me was a lot of fun. That was my first time really covering a tournament, but you don't want these games to end in a shootout. So, that one always is a little, even though Troy Terry was an absolute beautician that whole tournament, that one kind of goes down in the rankings for me. I was a little too young for 97, a little too young for 04, so this goes right up there with 2010.
Jordy, what's the hype like in America this morning? I mean, if Canada wins, it's a big deal up here, but we're not getting the ESPN, the Bleacher Report. Whitney's not posting videos about Canada. What's the hype like in America right now?
Yeah, it's there are websites that are talking about the tournament that I don't even know if they know that the tournament had existed before. I have buddies on Instagram posting about it, and I'm like, I know for a fact that you guys didn't watch until the gold medal game, but obviously there weren't too many people here clued in as the tournament was going, but when gold's on the line, and especially against Canada, that puts the eyes on the TV for sure.
Well, what a tournament to, get some people into it with. Now, let's start off with, that very first game, though. Spencer Knight kind of lays an egg. I'm not going to blame it all on him, but he didn't play good against Russia. Were you worried at all about, them going back tonight? Because I said it from the start and talking on multiple shows. I don't know if Dustin Wolf's the gold medal goalie. I think Spencer Knight was their guy who they had to go back to if they wanted a chance to win.
Yeah, I definitely have some things that I need to delete from the internet after that Russia game. I did mention that I think that USA should think about going with Dustin Wolf. I have a bias towards Everett Silvertip's goalies, just as a huge Carter Hart fan here in Philly. So I figured, all right, Carter Hart has so I was like, okay, maybe Dustin Wolf could be that guy. But I mean, what an unbelievable bounce back by Spencer Knight. Dumb and Dumber just totally redeemed himself.
So I'm not going to toot my own horn too much, but I picked USA to win. I picked Trevor Zegras to win MVP. Do you agree that he was just so much better than anybody else in the tournament? Maybe other than Tim Stützle, but even as a Canadian, he was just head and shoulders above everybody else, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Stützle is, obviously he's an incredible player, but I think that maybe it's just a language barrier thing, but he wasn't able to play, with the same swagger, confidence, cockiness that Zegras was, there was a time in the Russia game where Zegers went for the Michigan, like obviously it failed, but like you could tell right there, like that's a kid who was just kind of, laying it all out there and saying like, listen, like I don't care about any of you guys. I'm going to be the best player in this tournament. So I mean, I think that swagger, that cockiness, you saw that right before the game, talking about Canada not being tested 5-on-5, and I mean he lived up to all that. So
he backed it up. He was right. I mean, Canadians are hating on him right now, but I'm like, he's the best player there, and he backed it up. Like I love the swagger on him.
Yeah, he looks like an absolute stallion too.
Yeah, and I think, he's from that, New York, Connecticut area where I think like people from there, they kind of they thrive in that position of being hated, like they're able to feed off of that. So, I think that might have been a little calculated on his end. I think he's a kid who would probably embrace the hate a little bit.
Jordy, we only got 30 seconds left or so, but I got to get one more off you. I mean, the garbage can, the pail, whatever you want to call it, the barrel. Are you fully on board with this? Like, I think I've heard this story before, actually, but my bullshit meter might have been going off a little bit. Adam was the pissed off one, so all shitty tweets were his. But I had the yellow warning going around too.
Come on, boys. You don't have to be so sensitive up there, okay? Like, maybe there's a little bit more to it than just a barrel, but so what? It's a game. Have fun. Don't be sensitive. It's a rivalry.
Jordy, you're the best.
I'm more mad that we lost to a team that had to use a barrel for like their motivation. Like that's what I'm more mad about. But awesome. Thanks, Jordy. We'll have to get you on again to talk Flyers.
Absolutely.
Jordy,
thanks for having me, boys.
You're the man. Thanks for hopping on. Barstool Jordy right there. Go follow him on Twitter at Jordy Barstool. Awesome blogger too. I mean, if there's one guy I'm reading throughout the tournament, it's him. Just, he's got that realism too. You can really connect with it. All right, quick commercial break here. We're going to come back. Hockey writer and podcaster Stephen Ellis. Let's talk Team Canada. It's World Hockey Report, 12-ounce Sports, Zingo TV, channel 761. World Hockey Report live. Cody Jansen, Adam Erbentrout with you here on 12-ounce Sports. Joined now by Stephen Ellis, the man with all the drawings, probably your favorite follow on Twitter through World Junior time. Stephen, how's it going?
It's doing great. It's weird waking up and not having any games to watch today.
Yeah, I know. It's and now we got a week. Yeah, it's a week from today until the NHL starts. So, I guess we can catch up on some sleep that we probably missed. Let's dive into the tournament, though, because obviously it was a thrilling finish. I mean, no matter what side of the fence you're on or border you're on, that USA-Canada game, it was pretty damn good. Let's not kid ourselves here. But I wanted to ask you, because no fans in the building. I mean, you've seen enough tournaments. You've seen enough tournaments in Canada. How big of a part do you think that played for the Canadians not having that extra boost, that extra jolt of a home crowd?
Yeah, like even when Canada plays elsewhere, they're essentially the home team with the fan reaction. So it's not like we can go say that other teams would have that same advantage elsewhere. We know what Canada could do, but being in Canada, not having those people, that was definitely hard for the players. But at the same time, like they were saying throughout the tournament, it's like, we're focused on the games, we're focused on that, and they've spent a long time in their careers playing in empty arenas, whether it's at a young age or even a junior hockey in some places. So but yeah, you could tell like this was a Canadian team that just they simply got outplayed. It wasn't like Canada played bad. I think because they put that effort against any other team, it's a different story. But the Americans just came together. They blocked the shots. The goaltending was great. Everything came together for the Americans when it needed to. And so I don't know how much better it could have been for Canada, but maybe if they were able to score on a goal and get that crowd going, maybe we're talking about a different story. But simply, you can't win without scoring goals.
Stephen, what do you think Canada's downfall was in this tournament? Because me personally, I tweeted out 3 days ago that they had no chemistry amongst their forwards, and I mean, you look at their points and they're kind of tainted with the 16-0, or 16-2, 10-0. Just how big of a factor do you think not having the forward chemistry kind of killed them this tournament?
Well, I think for the one thing was just the guys that were kind of the goal scorers of this team, in theory, like Cole Perfetti and Jack Quinn, just didn't really step up in the way they needed to score goals. And but I still think that everyone kind of really subscribed to a two-way mentality, and it really worked. I thought for Quentin Byfield didn't get a lot of points outside of that 6-point night, but I thought that he actually had a fantastic tournament. If you look at the fact that he was never known for being a physical guy, and he was in this tournament. He added some elements to his game, so I think there was a lot of things to be looking forward to with that forward group. But I think that like they at a lot of points in that game against the Americans, they were the better team and they had the opportunities. They just weren't getting the high danger scoring chances because the Americans did a good job of kind of limiting that. But for a team that rolled the four lines, I was kind of hoping we'd see some more scoring throughout the lineup. And I know Tomasino was a guy that early in the tournament, everyone's like, well, look at him play. And then we didn't really see much of him in the second half of that tournament. And other guys where, there could have been some better chemistry, but they kept the lines together for the most part. And it was just a lot of skilled guys. But there was also those games, like look at that game against Germany. I don't even think they hit 50 shots, if I'm correct, which like is almost unheard of for a team scoring 16 goals in a game. So it's a you would almost want them to shoot more, but they necessarily didn't need to just because they were outplaying everybody else in every other department. So it just didn't work out against Canada.
Now I'm very intrigued by that guitar in your background, but we're gonna stick with talking hockey here.
Well, I'll say this. I'll say this.
Guest.
I'll say this. This is my family's house, but in my apartment in Toronto, I got way cooler guitars. These are like the cheap ones that from like when I was a young kid, essentially. But I've got like a 7-string guitar in Toronto. I got a 6-string bass. I record my own music and everything. All the cool looking ones are back somewhere else, unfortunately.
Well, we'll stick with hockey for this. I know you're out in Ontario, Stephen, and I want to ask about Devin Levi. I know, he didn't play in the OJ particularly. He's in the CCHL, but like, have you heard of him before? Had you known about the hype? Like, obviously he's a CJHL MVP, he's breaking records and stuff. Like, did you know about him before? What were your expectations for him coming in here?
Yeah, well, he had a fantastic World Junior A challenge last year, and that's where it kind of really put him on the map, I'd say. But I've been able to watch a lot of CCHL, and I even saw him back in midget, so I actually got to see quite a bit of him. I put together an article for my own personal website in the summer where it's like, let's look at Canada's goalie options, and I included my finalist to make the team, and I cut him. He's my first cut. I just thought, he wasn't invited to camp. I know he's good. I thought he should have been invited to the virtual camp. In the end, virtual camp didn't really matter much. And I think even last year, the goalies that were invited to camp weren't the goalies who made the team when Joe Hofer and Nico Dawes were the stars of it, and they weren't even at camp to start with. So I'd say, like for Levi, we knew he'd be good, but my biggest thing against him, and a lot of people would say the same thing, is the fact that he's not a huge goalie. He's only 6 foot, and that worked well in junior hockey. I don't know how that translates to the NHL, and that's why I think he was kind of more of a lesser-known goalie because he was drafted so late. But we've seen in the past, when he gets hot, whether it's the CCHL or the World Junior A Challenge. So he's a goalie I was very familiar with, and I was excited to see him get that opportunity. I felt bad for him because when they went into the quarantine in camp, he actually he hadn't participated in camp at all, and they were going to make cuts right after. So my assumption was, okay, well, they've seen what the other goalies could do. They haven't seen what Levi could do. He'll be the first cut, and the rest is history.
Stephen, would you make any alterations to this tournament? Because the pool for next year is almost identical to the one this year. And I mean, I'm not going to be an apologist for Canada, but they weren't tested, as Trevor Ziegler said, until the final game. And I don't know, like, would you do anything else? Like, would you go with our idea of having the top 5 teams in a pool and then having the other guys in a pool to make it more competitive? Just what are your thoughts there?
I've thought about that specific scenario quite a bit, and while it might be good for a competitive side of things, you're not really getting the exposure for those smaller nations, which is kind of like a team like Austria. They're going to play Canada next year. They might lose 15-0 in that game, but that will be the biggest game of that country's basically existence at this tournament. If they're playing against Slovakia and the Czech Republic and Switzerland, that's not the same thing for the fan base back home, and they need as much exposure as possible. So I don't think people are going to be as excited in Austria to watch a game at 4 a.m. if it's against Slovakia as they would be to watch a game at 4 a.m. to watch Canada, just because it's like, holy, we just made it. We just got a chance to play against our country, or the top country in the world in hockey. So I think if you really want to do that exposure thing, which is the talking point, I think you need them playing those top teams. But we just know, just international tournaments, it's not going to be equal. So it's going to be really hard to get those close games. It's just a product of any international tournament. Even Division 1A, we get these big blowouts from time to time. So it happens. I don't think there's a perfect solution. I don't think cutting it to 8 teams is a good idea. I don't think even go to 6 teams is a good idea, because then you're not getting those more teams. I would argue you almost need 12 teams, and then you maybe have a group of 4 that play together. But I don't know if there's really an easy answer to fix the competitive balance. I think you just got to leave it as it is. And the whole point we watch the tournaments for the medal round anyways, and that's where it's supposed to be the most competitive.
Steven, appreciate your time. You're always a fun follow come World Junior Spangler Cup time. Unfortunately, we didn't get that, but we appreciate you. We appreciate the drawings, and we appreciate you hopping on the show this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope we get the Spangler Cup back next year. I missed that big time.
Oh, we will. Thanks again.
Yes,
Stephen
thanks
Ellis,
so much.
right there from the Hockey News Line Movement podcast writer. He does a little bit of everything. He brought up a couple of interesting points, Adam, that I want to dive into. I mean, when we kind of talk about chemistry, this was my issue with it. And I mean, I hate to pull up receipts here, but I'm going to go with her, because I had an issue with when people are saying, okay, well, wee bit of a stretch, that's why America's won, is because they have a better development program. Like, I mean, I've never heard of Mick Kern before, but he hosts a hockey show. And how can you say, in full honesty, that this is a bit of a stretch, that the American development program is not as good as the Canadian system? It's way better. These guys have chemistry. They know each other. They've played together for 3-4 years, outside of a couple of minor changes where some late bloomers will pop in and some guys kind of fall off the map. But Canada's system clearly isn't working as well as it should. Yes, Canada's always going to pump more players to the NHL. We've got better minor hockey systems. We've got better resources. We've got more rinks. We've got more access to gear. All of that stuff comes into play. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense, Adam. I want your take there, because their development program's working. They've won 4 straight golds over Canada. They've won 4 golds in the last 10, 11 years. And hey, I mean, they've won, 8, 9 medals in the past 10, 11 years? It's working.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough, right? Because last year Canada won and US finished 6th or 7th or whatever. And I mean, it's an off year. I think it's weird. I mean, we always talk about the Hockey Canada mentality, and how a lot of the times that they try to push their program of excellence, right? So if a guy plays U17s and U18s, he's going to get a better look over U20s. And like out in Western Canada here, you look at a guy like Adam Beckman, who is the WHL Player of the Year, and he barely even gets a sniff in camp, and he's sent packing. And sure enough, you look at Canada's roster, and it's all these first-round picks, but as I tweeted, there wasn't really a wow factor to them. And another thing we're missing, especially on the power play, is that one-shot scorer, right? Like, we didn't have anything close to a Kaliev who you could just pass it to in the slot, it was a goal, or a Caulfield or something like that. And we had a lot of good players, and I mean, I think they'll be fine NHL players, but you look at the amount of times we switched the lines and the amount of times guys got cracks on the top line with Cousins and McMichael. I mean, Peltier, Quinn, Krebs, Newhook was up there a bit. Like, it just, none of them stuck. And I mean, I said this from the start, like, Canada, sure, they beat Germany 16-2. They had a bit of a lull against Slovakia where they only won 3-1, I guess, but they just went through stretches in the tournament where they weren't as dominant as they should have been, or it didn't look like they were clicking as they should have been. And sure enough, you get to the finals and you get shut out. And I don't even know who our second best player was. I know Stephen Ellis is pumping Quinton Byfield, and I mean, I thought he had a fine tournament, but for a second overall pick, you don't want him to be like a 4th-line grinder, because everybody's saying, oh, he's playing physical, but he's 6'4" and he's a second overall pick who had 2 points a game in the O last year. You'd expect a little more from him.
I agree, and I thought that we've talked about Byfield and how disappointed we are in him. I think it was your tweet out there that kind of really embodied what most people were thinking. I think Steven made a couple of actual points, though, that were, is he adapting his game? Because at this rate, that's probably going to be the style he has to play if he, makes it to the NHL in the next couple of years, because he's not going to provide that offense, as I think we've kind of seen in these tournaments. I just don't think that that's going to be his forte moving forward, which is fine. Not everyone's meant to be a goal scorer, point getter in the NHL, but you got to adapt, and maybe he is. Maybe it works out for the Kings. Maybe it doesn't. I think that, I don't know. I'm not going to be too hard on him. It's a tournament. It's a short span. Also, I mean, we're going to talk about Zegras as the best player in the tournament, but is he the most valuable? Are you telling me that he does what Tim Stützle does if they switch roles? I don't think so. I don't think even close. I think that Stützle is the most valuable player in a sense of what he did, no one else in this tournament could do.
Yeah, it's like the classic NHL, NBA, NFL argument where it's, are they the most valuable in the league? Like, are they the best in the league, or are they the best in the most valuable to their team? And I mean, the NHL seems to be going most valuable to their team, given that Taylor Hall won the award a couple of years ago. And I mean, look, without Tim Stützle, Germany's probably the 9th place team in the tournament, right? But with them, they're a crossbar away from taking Russia to overtime. So it's tough. I mean, without Trevor Zegras, like, does USA win? Probably not. Like, I mean, he has 2 points in the finals. He's the best player in the tournament. He's one of the all-time leading scorers at the tournament now. So it's tough. I mean, Stützle did win top 4. I guess I'm still struggling to figure out like what these awards even mean.
How you can be the MVP but not the top 4. That's part of my complaint. But yet again, look at the people who are voting for some of them.
Or how like the first team all-stars are Ville Heinola and Bowen Byron, but then Topi Niemela wins top defenseman. Like I didn't get it. Also, no offense to Levi, like I do think he was goalie of the tournament, but if he lets in 6 on 20 in the gold medal game, he's still going to win goalie of the tournament because they have to get
voting's done before.
It's done in the first period, right? So it's like Spencer Knight has a 40 save shutouts, Levi lets in 6 on 20 or whatever, then Spencer Knight's probably your goalie of the tournament. So it's interesting, but I mean, what are you going to do?
Okay, let's take these. Yes. I really want to dive a little deeper into Devin Levi. We do have Jason Clark, his former head coach, manager, owner, does it all for the Carleton Place Canadians coming up here. But Adam, I mean, from a goaltending perspective, I mean, you know enough goalies, you've seen enough goalies. Levi was as close to as perfect as it gets. Like, if you look at the game, that Turcotte tip, that's going in on most NHL goaltenders. I mean, that's a perfect tip. You look at that Zegras goal, that's an unfortunate bounce, a wild bounce that lands on the best player in the tournament stick, the tournament MVP stick, right? Like, it's weird to say, but I mean, Devin Levi was arguably I don't know, what do you want to say, the come out player of the tournament? How do you say it? Like, I mean, man, he was impressive. If there's one guy I'm taking away from this tournament, it's not Zegras and, his 1,000,000 points against Austria. It's Devin Levi, who really just came out of nowhere and said, hey, the net's mine. I'm going to be Canada's goaltender this tournament, and I'm going to do a damn good job.
Yeah, and I can honestly say there wasn't one goal that went in the tournament where I said, man, he should have had that, right? Like, there's deflections, there's power play goals, and then sure enough, like, the Zegras was just kind of a shitty bounce, I guess. But there isn't one thing that I look at and I go, yeah, we made the wrong choice, because clearly he was the goalie of the tournament. I won't argue that at all.
But Knight was also, I mean, a great performance by Knight. Like, they set a record.
We didn't test him.
No, he wasn't tested as much as I think he obviously could have. But let's give him credit where it's due. He wasn't making shitty turnovers. He wasn't giving up terrible rebounds. He did his job. I mean, he way outplayed Askarov. I mean, he outplayed Levi in the final.
How did Askarov get top 3 players on Russia? Like, that's like a legacy. Like, hey, we'll pump your tires for next year. Where it's like,
how about
what the hell was that?
Fetisov ripping Russia, saying none of these players would have made Canada. I thought that was wild. But okay, we got to get to commercial. Yeah. We got Jason Clark coming up next. We got more Devin Levi talk. It's not Levy. I mean, I've heard that, but everyone was saying Levi. Let's stick with Levi. It's a lot simpler. We're Canadians. We're English. It's World Hockey Report. Cody Jans and Adam Ermintrout with you on 12 Ounce Sports, Zingo TV, channel 761. It's Cody Jansen with you, World Hockey Report live. 12 on Sports Zingo TV, channel 761. Cody Jansen, Adam Ermintrout here. You know, we just talked about Devin Levi enough, so we thought it was about time we get his coach from last season on. Jason Clark, owner, manager, coach, Carleton Place Canadians of the CCHL, joins us right now. Jason, I mean, diving right into Devin's performance isn't what I want to do here. I want to talk about his last season. You know, he was the MVP of the CJHL. What was he like to coach? I mean, what was he like in practices, games? Did you know he was going to be like this?
Well, we recruited Devin 2 years ago. I run a college hockey combine here in Carleton Place. We bring in about 15 to 20 Division I schools, and Devin's agent and I are fairly good friends, and he brought him out 2 years ago to our college hockey combine, and it wasn't very long for us to be able to A, get him a scholarship out of that camp, but B, also know that he was going to be a very good goaltender. So, and we had committed to him for a year out, so he went back to Lac St. Louis to finish off his last year of midget, and then came to us last year. And his goaltender coach, his name's Marco Raymond from Montreal, and Mark was a really well-known guy in that area, and it's got a lot of really good young talent and does a very good job. And he worked with Devin all summer long prior coming to Carleton Place, and you could see a massive improvement just on his individual skills. But I think the big thing that separates Devin from any other player that I've coached and been around is that just as the way he lives his life away from the rink, and the attention to detail and all the small things like his nutrition and his sleeping patterns and how he does things, and it's just his pregame habits are just at another level. And I can honestly say this, like, I think he's probably got the same habits as you know, better than most pro guys, to be honest with you. Like, he's so dialed in of what he wants to do and into his craft. And when he came into Carleton Place, it's really funny. You know, people talk about his 3.5 hour pre-game ritual that he does. So he came in and he just a rookie goaltender, and we had our first 2 games, and he played really, really well. And after the first 2 games, the showcase, he asked me to have a meeting, and so we sat down, and he's like, "Hey," he goes, "I don't want to be that guy and be disruptive." He goes, "But I've got a specific routine that I like to do, and it takes me this amount of time. So I was wondering if I can get into the rink a little bit early. You know, could I skip the team meeting or have the team meeting with you before?" And I said, "Devin," I said, "you can do whatever you want." I said, "as long as you continue to stop pucks the way you're stopping them." So, I mean, he's just so dialed in. And another thing I think too that people should know about him, he's just a great teammate. Like, he's really well respected by his teammates. He cares about each and individual teammate and how they're doing, you know, within a game or within the year or the season, and cares about them as an individual. And he's just a wonderful kid to be around. And if you're fortunate enough to ever meet his mom and dad, you know, I'm always a big believer you're a product of your own environment, and his mom and dad have done an unbelievable job of raising just a very fine young man. So it was definitely a pleasure of coaching him and getting to know him as a person last year.
Jason, after the season Devin had last year, where he goes 34-2-1 as a .941 save percentage, you must just cringe at the fact that NHL scouts think that goalies have to be 6'4", and if not, that they have no chance at the league. Just what are your thoughts on Devin's size, and like how you think that's never going to set him back?
I think it's obviously it's very closed mind thinking. You know what I mean? If you take a look at how the game has evolved over, 10 years ago, if you weren't a 6'2" or 6'3" or 6'4" defenseman, then you weren't playing in the NHL. Now you see the NHL going to be as undersized defenseman. You see more and more all the time, and guys that can skate and make plays, and it's no different than goaltending. And I think it's very narrow-minded of anybody to disregard any player for any position regarding on their size. And I think one thing that I think everyone in hockey, whether you're a U.S. or Canada or around the world, to be honest with you, is that Devin Levi is maybe 6 feet, but he plays very, very big in the net. So I think that just imagine, being in his shoes, being told, for the last 4 years that, you're really not going to have a future, playing hockey at the highest level or trying to get to the highest level because you're not 6 feet. So that just tells you and goes to show you what his personal fortitude is like, about not listening to the critics. And I think a big thing with him is that he may be a little deaf. I think he knows how to turn his ears off and not listen to certain people and just continue to try and be the best version of himself every day and fine tune his craft. And I think that people got a really good insight to what Devin Levy is like as a person, with his interviews, but also of how good he is as a goaltender stopping pucks.
Jason, really appreciate you taking the time here this morning. I know we wanted to pick your brain. Obviously, you're running a great program there in Carleton Place, so keep that up, and thank you once again for hopping on the show this morning.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
So Jason Clark right there, owner, manager, head coach, Carleton Place Canadians on World Hockey Report. Alrighty, let's step aside. When we come back, Colton Tubert, former NHLer, former World Juniors gold medalist, and a silver. We're going to talk to him about that after the break. It's World Hockey Report live, coming to you 12-ounce Sports, Zingo TV, channel 761. It's World Hockey Report live. Cody Jansen, Adam Ermintrout with you here, 12-ounce Sports, Zingo TV, channel 761. Canada falls 2-0 in the gold medal game against the Americans yesterday. So why not get another alumni on? We've had a bunch. We've had Jeff Glass. We've had Zach Fucali on. Let's get Colton Tubert on. I mean, we've talked enough about some of those teams around that 09 time. I wanted to ask, so, I mean, you won a World Juniors and you also pick up a silver. Walk me through the emotions. I mean, how different is it looking back on it now, just going through that? I mean, where you're on top of the world, then all of a sudden you're crushed.
Yeah, I think today feels like a bad hangover for whatever reason. You just hate to lose, right? And specifically at the highest stage possible, like second place isn't good enough. You lost the game and it almost the silver medal loses its shine or whatever. It's tough, especially when it's Canada versus USA. That's the cherry, one of the big rivalries, right?
Colton, how quickly in a tournament like this do you need to find chemistry with, like, whether it's your D partner or the forwards? I think Canada struggled with that, and it ultimately was the reason they didn't win. But how quickly are you like, oh shit, like me and my D partner better figure it out here before we get going?
I think it's got to happen right away in the first couple practices. You have to, feel that energy, or the coach has to see where there's those kind of disconnects and make those adjustments with the lines. And then you gotta commit to something, right? You have to get used to something a little bit. Specifically for like a D partner, for me, I was always getting paired up with somebody that was potentially a better skater or, a little bit more offensive than me. So I knew going into everything, what the expectation was and how they wanted me to play. And I just tried to perfect that as best I could. And whether it was with Pietrangelo for a shift or Ryan Ellis for a shift, it was just about always being ready for that opportunity to go compete, especially when you have so many good, talented players on your hockey team. In any other sense, they could play this position on the first line, or they could be a fourth liner, they could be a PP or a PK guy, and everything's different on your home team, right? And how that all works together, you have to have an initial buy-in from every single guy.
Colton, I want to pick your brain here, and let's take it back to a positive memory. 09 semifinals against Russia. You know what I'm talking about. Jordan Eberle with the goal. Walk me through it from your perspective. I mean, that's obviously one of the craziest moments in hockey, Canada's existence. But you were there. I mean, walk me through it from what you saw.
Yeah, you know how your neurons are fired when people are asking you questions? It gives me shivers because I know exactly what you're talking about. I remember, you have that self-doubt. You have that team doubt that initially creeps in, especially when you're starting to lose. And that's something that I think Canada just couldn't get out of last night. We're down a goal. We got to climb uphill. Sometimes going back to basics and being a little hard to play against can help. And I think, with Elf, we had PK Subban, Pietrangelo, Ryan Ellis. I mean, the list goes on. Cody Hodgson, the first shift. Just his compete, his forecheck. times are changing. Skill development takes that out of the game a little bit, and you have to be able to, call a timeout, let your team know that, hey, someone's got to go out there and change this momentum. And it doesn't mean take a stupid penalty or get in a fight, which is sometimes what would happen if I was asked to do that. But it's just really about those miniature battles within every shift, and USA was just winning all those puck battles.
I'm not even going to bring up 2010 because I was in that end, and I've seen that John Carlson goal enough over the last month or whatever. But these guys, like, weird year obviously, but they're on a bird right now to go to NHL camps. Just how quickly do you have to put the tournament behind you almost and just go to your camp and go back to your club team? Because, like, I'm sure, like, you lose or win or whatever, and you're back in Regina, I'm sure, a day or two later playing in a game.
Yeah, everything's different now. So I don't know how I'd be handling it. Obviously, all these kids have been going through the pandemic. They're in this bubble situation. We were there anyways, when it was, full 20,000 fans, it was a bubble situation. You're with your teammates every day. There's that internal compete, and where this guy's drafted, who pisses you off and who you might have to see later. And, there's all those different personalities within that group of that team. And I think for some of those guys, it's going to be walking into success because the league is built on, young players now, fast, high scoring, athletic players. I think some of those guys are going to do really well. And I think some of those guys will learn pretty quickly as well that there is a step and you're playing against grown men. It's not the World Juniors anymore. And, when you look at all this, the arguments being made right now for all these countries that didn't particularly do very well, I know guys from Germany who played in the World Juniors, and they do speak of it as a memory they will never forget, whether they lose 15-0 or 3-1. They got to test themselves against some of the best in the world, and they get to tell the story to their friends and create miniature dreams in, German hockey players or Austrian or whoever, right? So hockey's just a full circle, man. I think I'm excited for those guys and excited to see how this NHL season kind of unfolds in January.
Tubes, thank you so much for hopping on the show. I think we got to get you back on. We didn't even dive into going over to Germany, playing in the NHL. Well, I think we'll have to arrange to get you back on sometime down the road. Thank you again, though, for bringing up some of those memories and helping us out here on the show.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
It's Cody Jansen, Adam Ermintrout with you on World Hockey Report. Quick commercial break. When we come back, it's the American writing sensation. Chris Peters joins us next. World Hockey Report coming to you live 12 on Sports Zingo TV channel 761. It's gold for USA 2-0. They beat Canada, and so the man who predicted it all. Chris, I listened back to that interview, and word for word you hit those nails on the head. Chris Peters, our guest here, American hockey writer, ESPN. Is this the best USA team of all time, though? To be blunt, they were incredible. It's one of those things we talked with Craig Button as well, and the best teams in the tournament get better as it goes on. They face some adversity at the start, lose to Russia, they wipe it off, no big deal. They just come back and slaughter the tournament, winning gold.
Yeah, in terms of pure talent level, I don't know that I would necessarily call them the best team ever, but I think that was probably the best gold medal game performance that I'd personally seen from a U.S. team, just given the fact that the first period, they dictated the pace. They had to prove right from the drop that they could skate with Canada. That was the key. And you have to build that belief in yourself. And so that was the first thing they had to do. Then they go ahead and score the first goal, and all of a sudden Canada's trailing for the first time in the tournament. First 5-on-5 goal against. And really, Trevor Zegras was the one that called it before the game. He said, we think we're going to surprise them. And they did. Canada it took them a little too long to push back, and by the time they did push back, Spencer Knight was completely locked into the game, and he wasn't giving up a goal. So I think that in terms of performances, Trevor Zegras had the best performance by an American player in the history of the World Juniors, 18 points. It's second most points in a single tournament all time. I think every point that he had, he assisted on the first goal and scored the second goal in the gold medal game. So it's pretty, most of the points that he scored came on consequential goals and had points in every single game. Spencer Knight, first U.S. goalie to have 3 shutouts in one World Junior, and no U.S. goalie has ever had 3 shutouts in a World Junior career. So an amazing tournament from him after a really tough start against Russia. just all around. I mean, that performance, the defensive performance they put on, the forechecking that they did in the first period. I mean, they played exactly the way that they wanted to, and then they got the key, the timely scoring, and then obviously had the better goaltender for that one game. With all due respect to Devin Levi, who had a historically great tournament for Canada prior to that. So, and I think even in that game he made some big saves. So it was just a phenomenal gold medal game, and certainly one that USA Hockey will be very proud of and think fondly of through all time.
Chris, Trevor Zegras, his performance, where does it rank for you all time? Like I saw your tweet where he's with the likes of Forsberg and Naslund and Krutov. A second part to this question, since we don't have a lot of time. Matt Beniers, you're a big draft analyst for ESPN. Like Matt Beniers, I hadn't even really heard of him before this tournament, and he's their second line center. He takes a big face-off versus Finland in the semis. Like he, I think, helped his draft stock a lot.
Yeah, I'll do the Beniers part first, just since it's fresh, and he I think coming into the tournament, he was pretty likely to be a top 10 pick in this draft, and coming out of it, you say, based on what you see with him playing head to head against the best players in the world in the age group, you say, okay, well maybe it's top 5. And I mean, I think there are a few teams that are, because there is no clear number 1, even though Owen Power, his own teammate at Michigan, is probably the front runner right now. You can't deny the fact that Beniers at least has an outside shot. He's not the traditional number 1 pick kind of guy, but I don't think we have a lot of that in this particular draft class. And it's a weird year on top of that. So I think that he did help his draft stock. I thought that he was phenomenal at both ends of the ice. He was the kind of guy that played to USA's identity, which was to dictate the pace, be hard on the forecheck, play the body. And then he still has the skill as well. He didn't have necessarily the production in this tournament, but he drove that second line and had a great tournament. To get back to Zegras, I think it's definitely one of the best performances, not just by an American, but all time. And I worked with TSN. I was on the panel to determine the top 25 World Junior players of all time. And I think all of a sudden, Trevor Zegras enters the top 10, if not the top 6 or 7 of that conversation based on 2 World Juniors, 27 points in 12 games. In 2020 and 2021, he lost 2 games last year because of getting bounced in the quarterfinals. So you look at some of the names on the list ahead of him, and it's Hockey Hall of Famers. It's some of the best international performers of all time, and without hyperbole, I think that Trevor Zegras just put together one of the best World Junior tournaments back to back in the history of the tournament, and certainly for an American, he's number 1.
Were you surprised at all that the Americans went back tonight? I know there was a lot of talk about people wanting Wolf and Net, but I mean, from my perspective, Knight's a gold medal goalie, Wolf isn't. Were you surprised at all?
Well, I think Dustin Wolf absolutely could have been. The way that he had played, he didn't allow a goal in the tournament, in the 2 appearances that he did have. He's been in big game situations before at the Hlinka Gretzky Cup, and, he was part of the team last year. I know the coaching staff had faith in him, but I think the biggest difference was familiarity with Knight. Nate Lehman sees, Spencer Knight several times a year at Providence College, and when he's playing Boston College, he knows the type of goaltender that he is. And that entire U.S. coaching staff, including, Chris Mayotte, who was on the bench as he's an assistant coach and also worked with the goaltenders. He's been around Knight for years and years, and everybody knew what he was all about. And the knock on Spencer Knight actually had been from scouts, and this is before the game. I talked to a few, like, we haven't seen him win the big game yet. He lost in the World Under-18 Championship 2 years in a row. He did win a gold at the Under-17 Hockey Challenge, but he had never, in the later stages of his career, those big games, he hadn't necessarily had the performance that he needed to have to give his team the best chance to win. Well, he quieted those doubts pretty quickly with his performance yesterday. And Nate Lehman, quick to praise Dustin Wolf. He said he's a phenomenal teammate. We thought we could win the gold medal with him if we needed him, but we just, basically we had to make a decision as a staff early on in the tournament who was going to be the guy to get the starts, and it was Spencer Knight. Even after that tough start against Russia, they knew his mentality, they knew his mindset, and that's why they went back to him and made him the number 1 and kept him as the number 1, which I think was really the plan all along. And then he rewarded them with a historic goaltending performance for USA.
Chris, I want to ask you about Nate Lehman. I mean, it just seemed like he pressed all the right buttons in the tournament. Like Cole Caulfield wasn't on their first line, Alex Turcotte wasn't on their top power play. Like you're dealing with egos in this tournament. He did a great job, Knight too, and even in the finals, not taking anything away from Knight, but they shut it down pretty good. And just your thoughts on his performance. And I mean, looking at his numbers in Providence as a coach, like, do you think he's a potential NHL candidate one day?
I've thought that before the World Juniors. I think that it certainly helps his cause now. He's gotten a lot out of Providence where he hasn't gotten the Trevor Zegras level talent. He hasn't gotten the Cole Caulfields, like those types of guys to come to Providence. He's won with players that were, down on depth charts, and he helped turn those teams into contenders for national championships. He's also helped a lot of players develop at the collegiate level. Jack Dugan, a Vegas Golden Knights draft pick, spent 2 years at Providence and was the leading scorer in college hockey last season. I thought his game really grew. So he was a phenomenal. He's a phenomenal coach in terms of developing and getting a lot out of players, even getting more than maybe should be able you would be able to get. But you look at that gold medal game against Canada, and it was exactly to the game plan that he set out. Even in the pregame media session, he's like, he didn't want to give too much away, but he said the most important thing to do to this Canadian team is to get them to face make their defensemen face the glass. That make sure that the plays they have to make, they're facing the glass as opposed to facing up ice, because he knew their transition was deadly. That requires buy-in from the team, because it means you're trying to chip pucks behind them and you're going hard on the forecheck. You're not making a ton of skill plays at that point. And those guys bought in. And I think that Nate also gave a ton of credit to his players. He said that, in terms of how they set the mentality, they put the team first. He was so impressed by the group, and he said, you look at guys like Trevor Zegras, and the plays that he was making away from the puck were sometimes just as impressive as the plays that he was making on the puck. And so when you have guys that are doing that, it makes it a lot easier to coach the game. And then obviously every coach needs a good goaltender. Nate Lehman's had some really great ones at Providence over the years, and he obviously had Spencer Knight in this tournament. But, I think that NHL teams were already aware of him. I think he's been on the radar. He was very held in similar regard to guys like David Quinn and Jim Montgomery, and got, some of the Dave Hackstall, some of the college guys that have gotten NHL jobs. And I think that, Nate Lehman certainly made another case for himself if he wants it. I know he's very happy at Providence, but if he ever wants to test the NHL waters, I think an opportunity is going to be there for him eventually. Chris,
I got one last one for you, and I'll keep it short. Are you going to confirm that that's a water barrel, or is that a trash can?
It is a water barrel. That is basically, Nate went into detail, and I will also confirm that he's been talking about the next barrel all tournament. And I had no idea what he was talking about when he said that, but I knew that it probably was connected to some internal messaging to the team. There was basically there's a story that he told the team about, crossing the Sahara Desert, and, these people were trying to, they had to basically walk across the desert, and the only way to survive, was to make that walk, and that they placed water barrels out, to kind of mark their, when they passed 5 kilometers. And so, you see the next people that came along would see the next barrel and the next barrel. So that's what he described the games as. It's what happens with the team. You do things like that. I think, bringing it onto the ice for the celebration might have been ill-advised, because obviously
they knew what they were doing there.
Oh, well, absolutely they did. And I think, Nate also said they took a picture. The team took a picture with the barrel. It had the logo of every team that they played in that particular game. After wins, they would take a selfie with the barrel, and the players wanted to have it out there for the team picture. And that's what happened. And so, Nate went into great detail and explained that I have the whole thing on my Twitter account too. I know that there's a lot of feathers ruffled for sure over that whole thing, but I can, to that team, it wasn't a trash can. To that team, it was a barrel, and signified the last obstacle that they had to overcome to win the gold medal. So that's where you get it. It's kind of a coach speak / motivational tool. And that's what happened.